Well, good morning, y'all. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to seeing what God does this week. My prayer is that He can open up your heart and my heart, and they can connect to His heart, and He can do work. And I love this morning opportunity to kind of set the table for the day. And I tried to peek my head around the curtain. I didn't quite see how many of y'all have and have not been to Move before. And so let me just remind those of you who have and clarify a little bit more, even for those of you who haven't, what my job is. My job each morning is basically to kind of set the table. All right, I'm kind of introducing some ideas that are gonna be something that we think about and talk about throughout the day. And so I want to prepare you for all that God is going to do in your small group time and your electives and then in the evening session. And so I'm going to do that in different ways on different days. Sometimes I might introduce an idea that the night speaker is going to take a little deeper. Sometimes I might do like part one of an idea and they're going to do part two. But one of the things I love to do is actually I get to raise a question, and then you can think about that as the day unfolds, and then they can come in the evening and kind of provide a little bit of an answer to the question. That's what I actually get to do today, and I say get to because that's my favorite way to lay this out. I just, generally speaking, love good questions. If you talk to me this week, and you're totally welcome to talk to me this week, I'll be around. I'll probably start asking you questions because I think it's just a fun thing to do. I think people are interesting, and the way to discover what's going on with you is just to ask. I like all sorts of questions. I like shallow questions like, what's your favorite ice cream, or what's the name of the street you grew up on, or what's the name of your high school, or what do you like to do for fun? I also like questions that make you think. I know it's a little bit early, but I'm going to see if y'all can think with me a bit this morning. How many of y'all like riddles? Any riddle people in here? There's a handful of you. I'm going to give you some riddles, and we're going to test this out and see how good you are. Now, here's the thing. Some of y'all probably already heard these. I didn't make these up. And so if you know the answer, just give it a minute, all right? Don't be that guy or that girl who's just going to ruin it for everybody else. So I'm going to throw a riddle up there, and I want you to think about it with me, and then I'll kind of give you a 3 count, and we'll lay out your answers. Fair? All right, so here's the first question. Pretty easy one. What is yours, but other people use it more than you do? Hang tight. Yep, some of you know. I see you. All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Your name. Very good. Okay, we're getting warmed up. All right, I like it. Here's the next one. All right. Now, again, I want you to think about this for a minute. Don't holler it out. Just if you know it, just give it a second. Can you name 3 consecutive days without saying Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? Think about it. Yeah, I just literally said don't say it out loud. I don't know who you are, but we need to talk later. All right, I'm going to count to 3, and you can repeat that guy. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, all right, thank you, sir. All right, so fair enough. I got one more for you. On this one, I'm going to lay it out, and I just want you to go for it. You don't have to hesitate, all right? So David's dad has 3 sons, Snap, Crackle, and... Okay, you guys are pretty good. Last time I did this, most everybody said pop. One guy in particular quite loud. So I like riddles because they make you think. But honestly, even more than riddles are kind of silly. I like deep questions that make you think. I don't want to be invasive, but I like asking people, like, what are you afraid of? Or who do you want to be in 10 years, and how are you going to get there? And what I want to do this morning is I really want to drive toward one big question. And I thought about giving it to you up top here, but I'm going to hang on to it for a minute if that's okay. And I want you to just sort of sit with me and prepare ourselves to ask a question and then think about that question as we go forward. Now, I do want to ask a different question to kind of get us there. This is a question I always think is worth asking. What do we need most right now? That's a good question. It's a hard question in a room this size because there's a lot of different people in this room with different stories. We don't have the same life. We don't have the same fears. We don't have the same experiences. We don't have the same pressures. And I don't know what yours are. I don't know what you left back home that you're happy to get away from for a week. I don't know what you brought with you. I don't know what tensions live in this room among people in your group or across groups. I don't know what you hope for this week or what you hope for the future. So there's a lot of things that are different about us, which makes it difficult to ask a question like, what do we need most right now? But at the same time, there's a lot that ties us together. At the most obvious and surface level, we all live in 2025, okay? Which means we know what it is to be tired. Can I get an amen? Yeah? How many of y'all in the last 6 months have relied for energy on some sort of energy drink or coffee or caffeinated beverage? Raise your hand. Yeah, 6 months. You're like, how about today? Yeah? We lean into these things because, man, our world's moving fast. And a lot of why we find ourselves tired and maybe even weary is because the world's moving fast and we're trying to keep up and life is busy and you're involved in all the things and you know how that is. But there's this other level that many of you have experienced where you're weary not just at a physical level but at a soul level. You're tired because you've been trying to follow Jesus faithfully and you live in a world that doesn't make that easy. You go to a school that doesn't make that easy, even if the word Christian's in the title. You live in a context where being faithful to Jesus and following biblical wisdom actually puts you on the outside more often than it puts you on the inside, and this creates challenges for you. And maybe, I don't know you yet, maybe you actually have already gotten to a point where you've thought, I don't really know if this is worth it. I don't know if this is what I want to do. And if you've had any inkling of that, or if you can even imagine what that would be like, maybe some of y'all are sort of here because you're thinking about Jesus, but you've heard that following Jesus is hard. If you've got any sense of that experience, then you've got a connection not only with each other, but with the Hebrews, because that's where they were at. Brad laid this out a bit for us last night. We're going to keep talking about the context of this letter called Hebrews that we find in the Bible, and it was written to this group of people who are Jewish followers of Jesus. So they'd grown up Jewish, and they'd followed all the Old Testament laws and covenant, and then they put their faith in Jesus because they believed, rightly so, that Jesus is the Messiah. He's the one God sent to finish the story. He's the one that God sent to reveal to us the way, to reveal to us the truth. And so now they start following Jesus, and they expect life to get easier, but it gets harder. And they're tired, and they're wondering if maybe they should go back. That's where they're at right now. They're just kind of drooped down tired. They're the exhausted emoji. Their shoulders down, face to the ground. I don't know if you have noticed this. You probably have experienced it. If you've ever been on a long walk or like on a hike, anybody in here gone hiking? I don't know if I got any hikers in the room. Most of you have been hiking. If you've been on a long walk or on a hike and you get tired, your natural tendency is to look what direction? It's to look down. Like that's kind of what happens to us. Our bodies droop when we're exhausted. And I think that's maybe why the central message of Hebrews is look up. That's the most consistent teaching that we find in this book is eyes up, and not just to the skies, but to Jesus. I want to show you a few different passages from Hebrews this morning. If you have your Bible, go ahead and take it out, and we're going to walk through it together. If you don't have a Bible, or if the Bible's a foreign book to you and you're not sure how to make your way through it, we'll throw them up on the screen. I do want to give you, for those of you who didn't grow up in church, I want to give you a quick rundown. So a lot of times somebody like me shows up in a room like this and says, turn in your Bibles to Hebrews chapter 1. And you're like, I don't even know what that means. Well, the Bible tells one consistent story, but it has 66 different books that contribute to that story in different ways. And that's how we kind of break it down into parts. And if you don't know where a book is, you can always just look in the table of contents. In this case, table of contents shows you where Hebrews is, and then it's divided by chapters and verses. And so I want to read you a few different passages from Hebrews that show you this theme across the letter of calling these people who are exhausted to look up and see Jesus clearly. We're going to start at the place that most makes sense to start, and that's the very beginning of the letter. So Hebrews chapter 1, I'm just going to read the first few verses, and I want you to notice what he's drawing our attention to. He says, well, I'll give you a minute to get there. He says in Hebrews 1:1, in the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, that's Jesus, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he also made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty in heaven. So right from the jump, we're looking at Jesus, and we're saying pretty big things about him. Turn over a page to the beginning of chapter 3. We're just going to look for now at verse 1. Hebrews chapter 3, verse 1. He says, therefore, holy brothers and sisters, that's you guys, the family of God set apart. Therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. That word fix your thoughts is pretty clear. It's to focus your attention. It's to concentrate. It's to become aware of one thing that's in the room. So it's to turn your thoughts away from all sorts of other things and to lock in and lock on to one thing. And in this case, what we're locking in and locking onto is Jesus. One more toward the latter part of the letter, chapter 12. We're going to talk about this passage later on this week. I just want to mention one phrase within this to you to show you that this theme of looking up to Jesus really does go all the way across the letter. In Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, the author says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. What Hebrews is trying to communicate to us, to you, to me, is that what we always need most is a clear vision of Jesus. That may not be our only need, but it's our greatest need. In any given moment, no matter what's going on inside you or around you, what you need more than anything else is to see Jesus clearly. Hebrews is clear about this. I don't know if you've ever thought about the importance of seeing, but I find the eyes to be fairly fascinating. 80% of our memories are visual. Like if I asked you, tell me what it was like to be in elementary school, most of you would automatically picture something. You wouldn't first smell something or hear something or taste something. You would picture the classroom that you were in or the bedroom that you lived in at the time or your house or your street or whatever it is, because our memories are driven by sight. And it's not just the past, it's also the present. Like sight does more for our interpretation of the world around us than all of our other senses combined. Like when you walk into a room, you don't walk in with your eyes closed, sniffing around. You're not a dog, you know what I'm saying? Like you walk in, and what do if you want to understand the room? You look around. Now, of course, you're going to listen, and you're going to sort of experience it in different ways, but sight is what drives our experience of the world. And that's probably why the eye is such an intricate organ. The eye is made up of over 2 million parts, and it takes over half of your brain simply to see. I don't know if you know this, but the eye is so finely tuned, in fact, that you can't exchange them. Like, you've heard of a heart transplant, yes? Or a lung transplant, or a kidney transplant, where one person takes an organ and devotes it to another person, they put it in the other person's body. There's no such thing as an eye transplant. You can fix the cover of the thing, but you can't take an eyeball out of one person's body and put it into another person's skull and brain. It doesn't work. Because there's over 100 million nerves that are connecting the eye to the brain, and it's too sensitive for any doctor or machine to figure out how to do. That's how the eyes work, and that's why they're so protected. I think God was telling us these things are important by virtue of how he protected them. They're set back in these sockets so that they're guarded from the world. They're overlaid by eyebrows that keep dirt and sweat out, and they're covered by the fastest muscle in the human body. It's called the orbicularis, and you exercise it every time you blink. It's very quick. I think God was trying to say to us that what you see matters. And I think the thing here is what you look at is going to determine your destiny. I think this is true. And I think this is worth thinking about for a moment, even early in the morning. What you look at is going to determine the options that are available to you, which is going to provide the context for what you do. And what you do is going to be who you become. And who you become is going to be where you end up. So what you look at determines your destiny, which is why what you always need most is a clear vision of Jesus. What you need more than anything else is to see him clearly. But that's where we finally come to the question. Because I would imagine some of you are thinking, yeah, that's fine for you, but I don't know where I'm at with that. And that's where I'd like to ask the question. And it really drives what I want to talk about this morning, which is this. What if Jesus is better than you think? I don't know what you think of Jesus, but whatever it is, I want you to ask the question, what if Jesus is better than I think? Now, I want to speak to a couple of different groups in the room. Now, you may not fit into one of these boxes. I'm not trying to box y'all in, but I want to speak to a couple of different groups. Now, there are some of you who maybe you're in, like maybe you grew up in church, you've been around the things of Jesus, and you think, yeah, I know Jesus, he's great, he's good, whatever, yeah, I'm in. And I want to tell you, please slow down. Because something can happen to those of you who've been around the things of Jesus for a while. You can get vaccinated against the real thing. Do you know how vaccinations work? I think you probably do, yeah? And I'm not trying to get political. I know there's a lot of controversy with these things. I'm just talking about the science of the whole thing, how it actually works. So if you get vaccinated, what happens is somebody injects you with a portion of a virus. And the reason they do this is not to make you sick, but so that your system can get used to fighting it off. So they put a little bit of the flu in you, and then your system learns how to fight off the flu in its small form so that when you actually encounter the real thing out in the wild, you can fight it off. You can be defended against it. That's a good thing when it comes to diseases. Not a great thing when it comes to Jesus, but that's what can happen. If you spend time in church and you're around the things of Jesus, you can get just enough Jesus in your bloodstream to where you probably accidentally get used to defending yourself against him invading into your life. You sort of put him in this box over in the corner and tell him to stay. And what can happen to you is you can get so used to putting Jesus in the corner, putting Jesus in a box, that when you come face to face with the real Jesus, you're vaccinated against his presence and power in your life. And so if you're a person who's grown up around this stuff, I just want to invite you to consider the possibility that you have a small view of Jesus that needs to grow. And there's a second group of you in here that I want to speak to a little bit. And that's where there's probably a lot of y'all in here, and you can be real, at least with me and with us in here. There's probably a lot of y'all in here who are going, I don't really know if this is for me. Like, I mean, I don't mind going to church, and I don't mind coming to this thing, and I'm willing to check it out. Maybe a friend brought you, or a parent sent you, or whatever it is. I don't know how you got here, but maybe you're thinking, that's fine, it's good for y'all, or whatever, but it's just not for me. And I'm not going to try to persuade you or convince you of anything. I just want you to ask the question, like, why not? Are you sure? If you think Jesus is for other people and he doesn't have anything for you, like, what if you're wrong? And I guess what I'd say is you're here this week, so you might as well lean in. You might as well create some space to reflect on the possibility that there's actually more here, not just for them, not just for the people in general, but for you. What Hebrews does is it invites you to reflect on this question: how great is Jesus? And it does so not simply by saying he's great, but by saying he's greater. Hebrews actually invites us to compare Jesus to other things. If you have your Bibles open, I want you to flip back to Hebrews 3. I should have told you to put a little note in there or something, but flip back to Hebrews chapter 3, because I want to read that verse I read a moment ago, but I want to read a little bit more of the context. We're going to look at the first paragraph of Hebrews 3. Now, one of the things that you may have already noticed, and you will, if you haven't, is Hebrews gives you a lot of details. And every time you read a passage, there's like a million things you could think about. And we're not going to try to talk about all of them, but I do want to focus you in on the key pieces. So follow along with me, and let's read Hebrews chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. We'll start again at the top. Therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. He was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in all God's house. Jesus has been found worthy of greater honor. That's an important word for us, greater. Greater honor than Moses, just as the builder of a house has greater honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything. Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. But Christ is faithful as the son over God's house, and we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. Like I said, there's a lot of words in there, and they're all worth meditating on, but we're going to focus in on this word, greater. There's actually a word that the author uses 13 times throughout the letter. Jesus is greater. He's greater than the covenants. He's greater than the sacrifice. He's greater than the angels. He's greater than Moses. And what he's doing is he's inviting you to test the quality of Jesus by comparing him to something else. It's like the old classic game, this or that. Y'all played this game before, yeah? Where somebody shows you two options, and you got to say which one you think is better. Let's roll through a couple rounds. I need to get to know y'all a little bit, because I'm going to be with you all week. So let me give you some easy, obvious ones from the start. We're going to show a couple of pictures, and then I want you to try to vote between the two, okay? So the first one is kind of the classic one, beach or mountains. So you're going to go on vacation. How many of y'all? Okay, on three, say beach or mountains. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's actually pretty mixed. Y'all beach people came in with it. You weren't messing around. Okay, so a lot of beach, a lot of mountains. How many of y'all want to be on a mountain near the beach? Like you want both, okay? Yeah, that's actually my people. Let's get it all in there. Okay, here's another one for you. This one's, you can't get offended, all right? Sometimes people take these things very seriously. Waffles or pancakes? Those are the two options. Okay. From what I can tell, waffles has the majority, but pancakes has this guy, whoever it was in there that just yelled that. He's very serious about pancakes. Yeah, and that's a nice mustache. I don't know how old you are, but you're killing the game on that thing. Yeah, dude. Rock it, baby. Okay, here's another one. All right, let's keep going through this. Let's see, I think I only got a couple of more. Okay. How about Taylor or Kendrick? Okay. These girls down here, I don't know if you don't like Taylor or if you just really like Kendrick, but you were very on that one. All right, here's an important one. Last one for us for now. Birks or Crocs on 3. 1, 2, 3. Crocs! Okay, I heard a lot of Crocs. I'm tempted to ask socks or no socks, but I really don't want to start a fight, so we'll leave that alone for now. Okay, so y'all have done this before. Like, you get it, right? And most of these examples are fairly silly. It's not like I'm going to put like 2 of your youth leaders up there and make you pick between them, although if you want to play it that way later, you can. But what Hebrews is doing is essentially he's saying this or that, Jesus or fill in the blank. And what's kind of funny is, let's just acknowledge this, that what this text is saying is Jesus or Moses. Like, which do you think is more awesome? Now, I say funny because I don't really know if that's something you struggle with. You know what I'm saying? Like, I imagine some of y'all brought some burdens in this week, and you need to lay those burdens down. Some of y'all got some sins you need to struggle with, some secrets that you need to share. I'm dead serious. What you hide can't be healed. Let that out. But I don't know that anybody came in here going, I wonder if I'm going to admit to everybody else that really I like Moses more than Jesus. You know, probably not. I've had a lot of people confess their sins to me through the years, and I unfortunately have had to confess a decent amount of my own. But never have I said or heard, Jesus is great, but I'm really struggling with the fact that I'm putting Moses above him. That's not a thing for us. And yet it's not that hard to understand that it was for them. Because every context and every culture has its icons. Every culture has its heroes. You know what I'm saying? The people that we look up to. Like, for instance, this is even different across ages. There are probably some of you in the room who are under the mistaken impression that LeBron James, wonderful as he is the GOAT. Yeah. And there are some wise ones in the room that know it's Michael. Like, right? That's just how it goes. Yeah. So, and I'm a Lakers fan for the record. And so we have our GOAT debates about who's the greatest, but really it's not even about that because, I don't know, I would imagine some of y'all might have a slight obsession with some famous person, but it's more so, who are the people that you're tempted to elevate above Jesus? And one of the things that I want you to understand about growing closer to God is that initially the changes in your life are pretty obvious. You're getting rid of bad things. But then you hit a certain point where there's not a lot of bad things in your life to get rid of, and yet there's still growth to happen because it's about your heart. And what God wants is to take over the throne of your heart. What Jesus wants is to take over the throne of your heart. And the question we have to wrestle with is there anybody that you've lifted up above Jesus? Maybe for some of you, it is a youth leader or a sponsor. Maybe you trust them more than you trust Jesus. Maybe it's friends. Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it is some sort of icon or hero. I don't know who it is. But what we're being invited to wrestle with in this case is who's actually greater. And for them, Moses, man, he was everything. Moses was, and I don't know how well you know the story, but the long and short of it is God's people in the past were in bondage. They were enslaved for like 400 years, and then God called Moses to deliver them from bondage. He delivered them from slavery to freedom, gave them God's instructions, and led them on a 40-year trek through a wilderness into the promised land. That's pretty big stuff. It's like Moses is there, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Martin Luther King Jr. all wrapped into one. And so these people who were followers of Moses and became followers of Jesus are recognizing that being followers of Jesus is not as easy as they think, and so they're tempted to go back. And what Hebrews says very clearly is Jesus is categorically superior. And I'm not yet trying to argue a case. I really just want to ask the question, what if that's true? What if he is categorically superior? What if he's the greatest of greats, more reliable than what you trust most, stronger than whatever it is you fear? What if Jesus is better than you think?
I feel like I had to be this like perfect person before I went to God, you know what I'm saying? Like I had to be perfect before I like went up to him or like bowed down on my knees and started praying, you know, like confessing